Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining Ideal Credit Union's Cybersecurity Awareness webinar. In today's digital world, scams and cyber threats are constantly evolving, making it more important than ever to stay informed. Today's session will provide practical tips and insights to help you better protect yourself, your personal information, and your finances. This is an interactive webinar, so we encourage you to participate. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please enter them in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to acknowledge them and address them as we go or towards the end of the webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce Tara Ambrose, Senior Financial Fraud Ombudsperson with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. Tara leads efforts to investigate reports of fraud and financial exploitation affecting Minnesota seniors and vulnerable adults, while also educating communities across Minnesota on fraud prevention. With more than 20 years of experience in financial services, she brings valuable expertise and firsthand insight in today's fraud and cybersecurity threats. Please join me in welcoming Tara Ambrose.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm glad when I see local institutions like yourself really engaging their clients on this topic. So, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Tara Ambrose, and I work for the Department of Commerce in a small team called the Senior Fraud Team, and we focus on protecting seniors from financial exploitation and fraud that includes cybersecurity components. So what I'm here to talk to you about applies to all ages, and we're going to kind of go over that. It's not age specific, but there are some extra protections for those that are 65 plus in the state of Minnesota, so I'll touch on those as well. As Geneva said, we can take questions throughout the presentation, but we should have plenty of time at the end as well. So I'll just start and kind of jump in with some shock factor in case you're not aware of how big of an issue fraud and scams are. And this is a cyber-enabled fraud. So I know we talk about cybersecurity as a big umbrella term. The vast majority of scams and fraud are conducted in some way, shape, or form over the internet. FBI reported last year 20.8 billion in losses that were reported. This is across the country. We believe there's much more than that, but that's just what was reported. And specific to older Americans, they've increased significantly, and they tend to have higher losses, higher dollar value in losses, even though some newer studies show that younger people are actually getting victimized at a higher rate, like they're being scammed more, but they don't have the money that people have worked their whole lives for and saved for. And I do, in my own experience, believe that once fraudsters or scammers realize they have someone with money, they definitely have different tactics and go after them in different ways. So I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some Minnesota stats that are from the same FBI report from 2025. So $248 million was reported in losses in 2025, and that's all ages. 111 million of that was 60 plus. And then we'll touch on it throughout the presentation today, but cryptocurrency losses, and there's a cryptocurrency nexus and 151 million of the losses from Minnesota victims. And so we'll kind of talk about what that is and what that means and how it intersects with a lot of the cyber-enabled crime. Those are some numbers that are real numbers. People lost that money. They reported it to law enforcement. But I want to talk about the unreported impact. So there's a lot of shame and stigma, and people think when, my gosh, why did I fall for that? Or how could I have been so, unaware? And I feel so bad and embarrassed. So people don't always report. Sometimes people don't know where to report it to. But there was a study done in 2023, 2024 with the Federal Trade Commission. So this is a couple years old already. And they looked at banking data. They looked at wire transfers. They looked at reports to law enforcement all across the country. They looked at reports to social services, things like that. And they came up with an estimate of how much they think is actually being lost in these fraud and scams each year. And they came up with a kind of astronomical figure of $158 billion. Some studies I've read, it might be even more than that. And the explosion that we've seen over the last few years really is focused on or sourced from organized crime in other countries. There might always be scammers locally. There might always be scammers in any place around the globe. But they are seeing a huge increase in sophisticated operations that are basically organized crime. So the money that they're stealing from Americans' retirements actually is going and it's hurting people as well on the other end. How are they so effective? How are they able to get all of this money? How are they able to do this? Some of it is the technology, the access to technology that they have. A lot of this can be done with a simple smartphone. The technology enables them to be able to, do a lot of different things that deceive people. But they often have these tactics in mind as well. And so these are pretty universal, whether it's a shopping scam, a government imposter, a romance scam. They use these tactics. So they pretend to be somebody you trust. They either build that trust over time, or they'll impersonate or pretend to be somebody you already have a trusted relationship with, like your bank, or potentially they can impersonate a grandchild and say, I'm in trouble, help me, help me. They create that sense of urgency, intimidation, fear, excitement. They know how to trigger that emotion, but there's almost always a sense of urgency when they're asking for money. They also will ask you to pay in specific ways. Some of the red flags are cryptocurrency, gift cards, wires sometimes, especially if it's to somebody you don't know, or gold or cash handed off to somebody you don't know. One of the biggest things we tell people to watch for too, scammers will direct you to lie. They will tell you to keep it secret. They'll give you a plausible explanation. We're under gag order. We're doing a secret investigation. You can't tell anyone, or you'll ruin it. You'll get in trouble. They will tell you to lie to your friends, your family, your bank, anyone who's asking you about this. So I want to think about these tactics really quick, and I'm going to go through an exercise and just see what we can spot as red flags. And then we'll talk about some proactive tips on how to keep yourself safe online before we dig into what commerce does. So thinking about these tactics of trust, sense of urgency, paying in certain ways, direct to lie, I want you to also think about the technology that a lot of these scammers are using as a cell phone and what they might be able to manipulate. I'm going to show you a screenshot of a Apple pop-up that would come up on somebody's phone or potentially their iPad or laptop. This is an example of somebody who saw this, something very similar to this on their phone. So I'd like you to look at it for a minute and read through it if you can. Hopefully it's easy to read. And just see if you see any red flags here, some of those tactics they're using. They're using the Apple logo. And so you think, well, only Apple can use the Apple logo, but that's not necessarily true. A lot of these tech platforms and ways that people communicate nowadays, they're not necessarily policing the use of other companies' logos. So it's really easy for people to impersonate other people and other companies. All right, so let's take a look at what I see when I look at this one. The first one is, this looks like a pop-up, and you might think, oh, it looks like a system message or some type of security warning. But if you go up top, this is a website, isn't it? This is what website addresses look like on a browser when you're actually searching on Google or on Safari or on Edge. That when you pull up, this is where you type in the website and it says .com. This is a key giveaway that this is a website that popped up, and often that popped up because you're on the internet already, and this is an ad that someone bought from whatever browser or whatever website you were on, and the scammers basically paid for this. So the scammers bought an ad, and this is popping up, and it looks like it might come from your device, but it's not. The other thing is kind of the language they're using. They're creating that sense of urgency. It was hacked. Someone's tracking you. Don't close this window. If the problem's not resolved, they'll reveal your identity and your browsing history to all of your contacts. Like, no real security company is going to say that. But if you scan over this really quick and didn't catch that part, it might seem legitimate. They also create that sense of urgency with a countdown, and we see this a lot in some of these tech ones. That don't turn off your computer. Don't try to deal this with yourself. Call this number now and fix it. You have 2 minutes or whatever it might be. And so, it also tells you to install certain stuff. Once you do this, it'll direct you to the App Store and it'll tell you to install the app that it recommends. And just because something is in an app store, just like when you Google something and the results come up, it doesn't mean you're finding the legitimate thing. So same rationale. Just because it's in the app store doesn't mean it's legitimate. It still could be a scam app that you download. And I'd be, any ask of you to download something is really, really a red flag. So what do you do if you see this? One of the things people are like, well, how do I get out of this? How do I X? There's no X up here in the uppers part. If you go down here and you minimize that window, like on your, this is a phone thing too. If you click down in the bottom right, then you can see that window. You can just close out of it that way. If you can't figure it out, power off your device and restart it. See if you can fix it that way. Most of the time that'll fix these windows. These are not legitimate system pop-ups. These are ads that are popping up in the internet, in an internet window. So you try to want to close that window. You can also consider a reset of your browser settings to kind of pop block-ups and reduce spam. When in doubt, power it off, bring it to a professional. Main thing is don't panic, slow down. Next one, this is an Amazon email. You might get this from a different retailer, maybe that you have an account with, maybe you don't. But let's just take a 30 seconds or a couple seconds and look at it and see if you see any of the red flags. Due to a problem with your card, we've been unable to charge your payment. If you don't update your card information in the next 24 hours, your Amazon account are on hold permanently. To continue using an account, please visit this link or log on to your account and update your payment information. All right, so the first one is some of the weird, this potentially could look legitimate, and they can also spoof the correct account. So when you're seeing it in your inbox, it could actually say Amazon.com and you're like, oh, that's the legitimate email. They have a way of making it look like that, but it's actually going from somewhere else. And sometimes if you hover over links, it'll show you the real place that it's going. Another red flag is just sort of the threatening language. If you don't do this and you don't do it by this time frame, something bad's going to happen. So the hover over, it kind of looks like this. If you, and again, I'm not on a live screen, but in the real world, if you're hovering over a link, it should pop up and give you this little window down here in the lower right and tell you the actual website it's going to. And sometimes that usually works, not always, but it usually works where you can tell where it's going to that way. But I would never click on a link that you get in a text or an email. I always go to the source. So stop, slow down. Remember that email addresses, texts, phone numbers, all of that can be what's called spoofed, which is just changed. They have technology, they can put in whatever they want. And then the best thing to do is if you have an Amazon account, go check your Amazon account, log in, call Amazon, the real customer service. And then if you figure out this is phishing, report it as phishing, make sure you know how on your device, how to report as spam or how to block email addresses as well. Last one, we'll just do a quick quiz. I think we all got this one last summer. These were going around by the millions across all states, but in Minnesota, we got hit pretty hard too. And so this was DMV. You're going to have to pay these fines based on this administrative code. If you don't, you're going to get, your vehicle registration suspended. There's this weird thing about a toll booth. Doesn't really make sense. So here's the first thing I noticed, though. It's a weird phone number up at the top. In accordance with North Minnesota State Administrative Code. What's North Minnesota? I'm wondering if they did North Dakota and just didn't change it correctly. And then, or North Carolina or something that didn't change it correctly. Also, if you actually take a chance to search this, it does not come up, and it's not anything to do with a Minnesota law. So the other things are, again, if the threatening deadline, this transfer to a toll booth doesn't make any sense. It might look legitimate because it has GOV in it, but again, it's not. You have to be really careful when you're reading these email addresses to make sure that they're legitimate. So don't panic. Read any text you get very carefully, especially if it's asking you to click something or read a code. I want you to slow down, really read that text message. No one should be calling you and asking for a code to read over the phone. Go to the website, go to the source. When this happened and all these went out, the Department of Motor Vehicles put a big banner on their website. We are not texting you about fines. This is a scam. And they gave an example. So that's always a good idea, is to go to the source. You can block the sender. So before we talk about how the Commerce Department helps, I want to just go over some proactive cybersecurity tips. One of the things, and if I could ask you to raise your hands if we were in person, I'm guilty of it too, is like how many of us use the same password on more than one account? I think we're all guilty of that, right? They're hard to remember. You have to make them so long now. But if that password gets stolen, I want you to think of then whatever accounts you're using that with, then the those accounts can be compromised as well. So you don't want to reuse across sites, especially financial accounts. And I want you to consider your cell phone account to be as important. Keep your cell phone, your internet account secure, is just like you would a financial account. You also want to keep your software up to date on your devices. So you saw that pop-up that looked like it was a warning about hackers, a system message. Real software updates do happen, and they do sometimes pop up and say, hey, you've got to update your device. That happens in your settings. So you can always go to your settings, the little wheel of the settings, how you go and change the details about your phone. The software updates will be in that section. They don't pop up via internet window. And then be careful of one-time passcodes sent to your phone. So again, if you're on the phone with somebody or texting with somebody and they're saying, I'm going to send you a code to your phone, read that to me or type that in. If you didn't initiate that call, if you're not trying to log into something, hang up, just start over, call the real bank, call the real company that you're trying to deal with. They're really good about impersonating banks' fraud departments right now and pretending to be a fraud department, and they say, well, just to verify your identity, I'm going to send you this code. But by doing that, you're actually granting them access to your online account. So never read out those codes that are sent to your phone. Same thing, don't reprove remote access or download any software from a prompt, from a call or an email. Like, just don't do that, especially if it's somebody you don't know, or again, something that they initiated the transaction. And have that skeptical mindset. So always check and verify before acting. Some of the other things, data-wise, to keep your data protected, I want you to also think of like your home Wi-Fi. I can't even remember. I don't think I changed the password since I set it up, and I probably should do that. So think about your home Wi-Fi. If you're one that travels, if you use public Wi-Fi, it's perfectly fine, but I would not log into any important sites with your passwords while you're on public Wi-Fi. Use a VPN if you have important business to do. Usually, again, you can research those as well, but if you're working for work, use a VPN so that makes your history private. So let's just talk a little bit about kind of some ongoing vulnerability and some of the ways we get involved and help. I want you to think about life events and how they can increase susceptibility to scams. And again, scams can be of any age. It's not an age-based thing, but in Minnesota, we do have some extra protections for those 65 and above, or those that are vulnerable. Scammers actually target people who have recently lost loved ones. They know how to take advantage of stress. They know how to take advantage of market conditions, job losses, aging, sickness, illness. They will build trust with you to get you to tell them information, and then they will use that information against you. It's basically psychological warfare. And I also want you to think about cognitive decline. It does not mean you have cognitive decline if you are have money stolen in a scam. Absolutely does not mean that. But I want you to think about how much harder these red flags are to see if you are having some dementia and your loved one's having some dementia. Even healthy brain aging to some extent has normal brain aging has an impact on financial decision making. So as you get older and as you have normal brain aging, your confidence stays pretty high, but your actual ability to make decisions about risk and consequences and other financial components of financial decision making, it goes downhill. And so by the time we realize something's wrong, I might think I'm doing great, but really I'm really struggling with actually how to do it. So sometimes having that plan ahead of time can really help to make sure you have the right support in place before that happens, because by the time you're showing signs of it, you're not going to want help because you think you're doing just fine. And I want to kind of just talk about the trends that we're seeing with the sophistication of these scams. That's no longer just one type of scam. It used to be where, okay, it's a romance scam. We kind of knew how it started, knew the flow, knew what happened. But the scams have gotten so sophisticated, they morph, sometimes quickly, sometimes over months. And it might start as a tech support, and then somehow they get your bank involved and you think you're talking to your bank. And now they're doing some big investigation and they've pulled in a government agency, or the government agency contacts you because they think your bank is in on it. And then now you think you're talking to an FBI agent or a treasury representative, things like that, and you need to move and secure all of your money in a government account. We see this almost every day, and it's no longer just a simple type of scam. It's so complex and confusing for us to investigate, as well as for the person who's experiencing this. They might have 3 different people calling them, but oftentimes by the time they get to us, they're dealing with this end of the scam where they think they are helping in some sort of sting operation, or they're trying to get somebody they love out of trouble, or they're trying to stay out of jail because they think they're going to jail for some reason. The other thing that they do, let's say I'm been targeted for one of these scams and I realize that I'm like, gosh, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I didn't send the money. I realized this was a scam. I stopped talking to him. Well, all of a sudden, out of the blue, a couple days later, I get a call. Yes, I'm Officer so-and-so from the local police. I'm investigating the scam that you did, that we know you were targeted by the scam. We're going to help you get your money back. First of all, please confirm the bank account information, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to get your information. And then they might say something like, we're going to catch these guys. We're going to do a sting operation. So I need you to do a transaction for me or read me this code so that we can do a transaction to catch these people. And so you might do that, but really, again, it's the same group of scammers. Or they sold your name to another group of scammers, and they are working together, they're coordinating, and they are systematic about it. So as you cut off the scam, they will occasionally keep trying to reach you and kind of get you back in, but they will also have somebody pretending to be a helper that can get your money back, and they're part of the scam as well. So really scary after you've been a victim, and people are desperate to get their money back. So it's very tempting. The other big trend that we see is scams that convince victims to use couriers or third parties that they've never met. Sometimes it's sending checks or cash to that person. Sometimes it's you'll get cash out of your, they'll demand you get cash out of your bank or buy gold, and they'll send a secret agent to pick it up, and they'll give you a password. And it happens so quickly, most people don't even get a license plate number. And then sometimes we see, unfortunately, victims bounce from bank to bank because they won't accept the fact that they are, or can't accept the fact that they're being scammed. And unfortunately, sometimes both the customer gets coached to move their account, or the bank says, we can't do what you're asking us to do. You're still asking us to send money to this thing and we believe it's a scam. We're not going to continue to do that. Or, you keep asking for $100,000 cash. We're not comfortable with that. And so we've seen time and again where customers then go from one bank to the next, and they ruin relationships. These scams can ruin relationships with financial advisors, with banks, with friends, with family. So I want to talk briefly about gold bars because we've seen a huge increase locally here of people being convinced or deceived into buying gold bars as part of this scam. It's not about investing in gold. It's usually about something else. And it usually is, in order to secure your money, we need you to go buy gold, and then you're going to hand it off to the secret agent. Or we're going to hand it off to this intermediary who's going to buy my freedom, or this person that you care about. So these are sometimes local gold companies where they will ask you to send a wire or bring a large amount of cash to a local gold company and buy these little gold bars. And then from there, hand them off to somebody. So I want you to think of any time somebody mentions a gold bar to be very cautious. I also want to point out a win we had in the legislature this past year. We were supportive of this at the Commerce Department. It was our bill that proposed this ban. The cryptocurrency kiosks, if you've ever seen them, they're in grocery stores, they're in gas stations, things like that. This was an entry point for a lot of scam victims where the scammers convince them to take out cash from their bank and then feed them into these machines, and then they go into like a crypto wallet. And so you think, well, my money's secure, I can see it in this wallet, but usually they provide the wallet number for you, and then they have a control over that and they steal it. So I'll just back up really quickly. You may or may not know what cryptocurrency is. It's a virtual currency that's not backed by anything. It's not regulated like our banking system or like our currency. That's why it is a haven for criminals. And so there are people that legitimately buy crypto for any number of reasons, but scammers love it. And so I do, again, there's no legitimate businesses that can demand you buy in crypto. That's not a thing. No government agency will demand you buy crypto. I want you to be very cautious too. When anybody's saying that you can make money in crypto, those are very sophisticated investment scams, and they're making the billions right now. So those just be very cautious online. No matter how much research you do, there's so much fake information planted, fake investment groups in the social media accounts, fake platforms, fake websites, all of that. So one of the big advantages here is now in the state of Minnesota, they're banned, at least this entry point. You can still buy crypto by transferring it to an online platform. But you can no longer take cash and feed it into these machines. So if you happen to see one of these machines and it's still working, you can call us and report it, and then we will work to do some enforcement action against the company that operates these machines. I was at Cub the other day and I saw one and I went over to the screen to check and it says, sorry, we're unoperational right now, something to that effect. So that was good. So here's the things I want you to remember if you suspect a scam or you get any of these red flags. I want you to pause. I want to always give it a breath, and it's okay to hang up. I know sometimes we want to be nice. We are afraid to have a confrontation. Just hang up. Worst case scenario, you find out later it's legitimate. You can just go, oh, my phone disconnected. That's fine. Just hang up. Or just, stop talking with them. Take a break from it, walk away. Verify. Always go to the source. Go to the original company, log into your app, talk to a friend or family member, or talk to your bank. Talk to your financial advisor. Call a fraud hotline, which I'll show you a couple at the end here. And lastly, talk to people about the scams. Report it. If it was an attempt or a successful scam, report that to law enforcement. It can be local, FBI, Federal Trade Commission. It's really important to report it. It can be helpful for you as well. Sometimes that's the only way you can get money back if they ever do a big sting operation and do catch these criminals. So it's important for you to also recognize those red flags, to have to think and kind of fill out that report. Do a security review of your devices and passwords anytime you have any type of breach or any type of scam. Make sure that all of your things are secure. Try not to answer calls. Use those blocking features. Use the filters that some phone companies provide or emails provide. Don't isolate yourself. And if you do happen to have money stolen when you're in a scam, be kind to yourself. It was not your fault. It was a crime. I can't stress that enough. And I think sometimes unfairly, we do a lot of victim blaming in our language as a society when it comes to scams and fraud. And I'm trying to change that and say, like, you didn't fall for a scam, it was a crime. So here at the Commerce Department, we're a regulator and we regulate a lot of industries, including some financial services, and we're here to try to help. So we do this in 4 different ways. We kind of talk and do education and intervention by calling out to consumers if we believe they're being scammed. We also assist financial institutions like Ideal. If they are having a customer that they believe is being scammed, there's also a process for them to place a temporary hold, which we'll talk about next. And then we also help the lead investigative agencies. So this is law enforcement or adult protection or the Department of Human Services or Department of Health. And then we provide public education like I'm doing right now. That's a big part of our job as well, is to try to get out there and make people aware of these things. So as I mentioned, Minnesota has a law that gives some extra protection to seniors. And so this is 65 or above, or those that meet the vulnerable definition, which usually is some type of impairment or needing services, and they're not able to protect their own money. And what this allows us to do is, again, kind of stop it for that person. If they're requesting $100,000 cash, the bank can say, nope, and they can start a hold here, and then they engage us and we help. The other things it can let them do is just it gives them some protections for reporting the suspected exploitation to a government agency or to notify a third party in this circumstance. So it's usually somebody, a trusted contact, an emergency contact, a family member. Speaking of trusted contact, this was also new in the legislature this year. If you ever get asked for a trusted contact, it's meant to help protect you in these situations, and it allows your financial institution to call you for any one of these reasons. Either your account is dormant, they suspect fraud or financial exploitation. It allows them to call that trusted contact person, the family member or whoever you name as the person as your emergency contact. It's also if there's an urgent matter and they can't get a hold of you, or you're just not responding. So when we get these reports, we assess the risk. We work with the reporter, which is sometimes a financial institution, sometimes it's a concerned friend or family member. We decide if we need to recommend any of these interventions. We try to contact the consumer and help educate them. And sometimes we can ask the financial institution to place one of those holds temporarily. We also make reports to law enforcement and other agencies to help in these circumstances if they haven't already been engaged. And then we're providing follow-up and resources to those victims and the reporters. Sorry. So here's how you contact us if you do need our help. We have an email address. We have a form on our website where you can actually submit a case to us. So if you do want our help with an ongoing problem, you can submit a request to us. And then this Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center is where you want to report suspected elder abuse or financial exploitation of someone 65 or above that is vulnerable. That's the key for them to get involved, for social services to get involved. The person would have to be considered vulnerable. Couple final reminders before we'll take questions. Some of the things to get ahead of this, like people ask me all the time, like, what can they do to stop it? You know, have that support plan, have people identified who are there. It could be your bank, it could be a trusted financial advisor or insurance person, it could be a doctor, your attorneys, things like that, and set up those legal documents that you need. No one wants to think about not being able to make decisions for themselves, but it can happen. It can happen at any age. So having that power of attorney, having that trusted contact or a successor trustee, having those things in place so you have choice over who's helping you in those circumstances, and you can build in, talk to your legal folks about it, but you can build in some oversight and protections in those documents as well. Make sure you're doing that proper password maintenance. There's other things you can do, like things like freezing your credit, doing a fraud alert on your credit report, or using one of those credit monitoring services. The Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, has some great information out there about that. You can also call your phone company and ask for help filtering or blocking those calls. Sometimes they have free services, and I have an app for my phone provider, and it does reduce a ton of those spam calls coming into my phone. You can even do things like, if you have a loved one, when my mom was struggling keeping her account safe, she would give out her information a lot or lose her card. I wound up using a prepaid debit card for her, and that's kind of like I put money on it first, and then my mom can use it just like a normal debit card that you get from your bank, but I control how much money is available then. So I was her power of attorney at that time, and I still went over her bank statement with her, but then I didn't have to worry that she was jeopardizing her whole account. It was just a small amount that I put on that card for her, and when I just refill it as she spent the money. But that way she still had her independence, but I had more oversight and could protect her main account. Frequent education, sign up for alerts. Again, the Federal Trade Commission has some great alerts. We're working on trying to develop a newsletter that would be optional for people to sign up for, that would help what we see in Minnesota here. AARP has wonderful resources as well. And one last tip, I'd say, always be honest with your financial institution. If they're asking you about questions, don't lie to them about what this kind of stuff is for. So that's my last tip, for kind of have that plan before you need it. Think about these things ahead of time, like what you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones. Here's some government resources, and at the national level, other resources. AARP, Fraud Watch Network Helpline. I can't tell you enough how wonderful they are when you call them for help. They will do the same thing. They'll walk you through red flags, help you understand if it's a scam, help you with resources, what to do next. When you do need to report to the FBI, their reporting center is called that Internet Crime Complaint Center. There's also a elder fraud hotline that's provided by the Office for Victims of Crime at the Department of Justice, and that's free as well. When you're thinking about that plan, or wanting to just think about how you set up your accounts as you age or as your loved one gets older, the Consumer Finance, the CFPB, has some wonderful information about that explains the different roles of power of attorney, trustee, all of those things, and how to help support those that need extra support. So that's what I had to share with you today. I know it's a lot to digest, but I wanted to see if you guys have any questions at this point.
Okay, looks like we have one question for you, Tara.
Sure.
Let's see.
I'll put these resources back up here.
If a person falls victim to a scam and sends money to another country from a wire, what steps should they take immediately, and what are the chances of recovering their funds?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. And if it's a wire, depending on how fast you act, sometimes they can recall that wire. The other thing I always recommend if a wire was just sent is to fill out one of these FBI reports. They have an asset recovery team, and usually if it's a wire that was sent within 72 hours, they will also try to help get it back for you. So the first thing you do is you want to go back to your bank and say, I found out it was a scam. Can you recall that wire? And you usually have to sign a form. And then they're basically asking for that money back. So if the other bank has that money, they often will then send it back. But the reason the scammers ask for wires is because they are considered, guaranteed funds. And so usually as soon as that money hits that other account, they move it again. And then they move it again. And then it disappears into a jurisdiction that doesn't cooperate with us. So oftentimes the money's gone by the time you realize it's a scam. That's part of why they ask for wires. So be really cautious, always slow things down when it's a wire, talk to your bank. But the first step would be to go to your bank and say, can you recall it? Because the faster you do that, the more of a chance you have. Really good question. A lot of the other types of payments that happen, some of them just you can't trace it. Cash, obviously you can't. Cryptocurrency, in theory, is all public, but nobody knows who owns those wallets. So instead of an account number, you have a wallet ID, and there's not names on there, so they're confidential. So it's really hard to tell. And so they can sometimes follow the money, but then they eventually realize it's at an exchange now that also doesn't cooperate with the US. And so it hits a dead end. But this is where the local police can help. And sometimes the FBI can help as well, where they can try to at least make sure it's not somewhere they could seize if they think they can get a case.
Okay, fantastic. So we do have 2 additional questions.
Sure.
We'll start with this one. What is the name of the app? Is it free? The app on your phone that is protective.
I'm not sure which. I don't know
I'm
that I
wondering if
mentioned.
the VPN, I'm guessing.
Oh, is that what you were asking? So there's lots of different providers, and I can't recommend a specific one. But there's new technology coming out where you can install apps on your phone that do protect and look for AI, that look for signs of scam, that will help, if somebody's impersonating your bank, will then not let you, log into your bank's app. There's definitely apps and technology there. A VPN is a virtual private network, I think is what it stands for. And usually there's certainly reputable ones out there if you search it. That allows you to basically log in and hide your IP information or your information and make it all private. And so do some research on that, talk to, a tech focused person on kind of what they recommend, or go to like Consumer Reports, read up on that. But I use that. So like when you're at work, and I work for the government, so I have a VPN. So anytime I log in, I then have to log in using this special code that I have an app on my phone, and then it lets me in. So there's certainly providers out there that are good, and that's something I'd encourage you to look at. If you're ever unsure about, like, is this a reputable program, I just recommend going to like Consumer Reports or AARP, or see if there's reputable companies that have done reviews of those programs. There are a lot of them out there, and they can be worth the money. But I also want you to know, like, if you're just looking to freeze your credit, you can do that for free. And the FTC does have a good article about how to do that on their website.
Okay. And I believe this last question is related to the previous question, but just to make sure,
Sure.
what resources can I read to learn how to effectively use a password manager, an authenticator application, a security key, and a pass key?
Mm-hmm. So I do recommend, I'm trying to think some reputable things. There's some Wired is a good reputable source. They do reviews of, they're like a magazine or news focused on tech. They have a lot of good review articles about what to do with passwords. There's also a government agency called CISA. I forget what it stands for, but that's a cybersecurity agency. They have some consumer protection stuff on there as well. AARP does have some education materials as well that's more tech focused. But yeah, I think that the password managers, the key is using sometimes a smart phrase, making sure that's secure. Usually the password managers that are built into your phones, I haven't seen reports of those not being secure or having big data breaches. So generally those ones that are built in are good. There are some you can pay for as well. The key is then you've got to keep that one password really secure, and making sure that doesn't get into the wrong hands. And so I do encourage you to kind of use some official or like more reputable resources to review and find which one's the best for you.
Perfect. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. And of course, if anyone, any of you come up with a question, please feel free to reach out to any of the any member service rep here at Ideal Credit Union or the resources that Tara has provided.
Just go back to my, where did I put it? Did I put it here? There's my, or you can always email me here.
So yeah, we thank you, Tara, for sharing your expertise and valuable insights with us. And to all, we hope today's webinar has provided you with practical tools and increased awareness to help protect yourselves, your personal information, and your finances. If you'd like to continue learning about cybersecurity and fraud prevention, Ideal Credit Union offers additional educational resources, and including previous webinar recordings that we've done at idealcu.com/seminars-workshops. There's quite a few on there that you can use as reference. So thank you to everyone who joined us and participated with your questions. On behalf of Ideal Credit Union, have a wonderful afternoon and stay safe online.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.